Alright guys, welcome to Algebra 2A. This is our first lesson on patterns and expressions. I'm not going to spend too much time in this because this one's pretty easy. But however, I do want to talk to you guys about making tables. Okay, tables is one of the most important things you could ever make for something, and tables help us figure out rules. They help work with stuff. They just work with that. So if we're dealing with something complex like this, y equals x squared minus 7, okay, so you're going to have your x values and your y values. Okay, now some of you guys probably have not sat down and just done a live lesson like this, or I'm sorry, not a live lesson, but sit down and make your tables and stuff. But in the past you might have, you might not have. But here it does help out because pattern recognition is everything in Algebra 2. So for example, here's our rule, y equals x squared minus 7. It's also called our equation. Okay, so we can start out at any number. I like to stick around 0, and usually I like to start with a little bit on the negative side just to see what's going on, a little bit on the positive side. And I usually go up by ones, you know, not to just change anything. So I usually like to keep around these 5 numbers, and I highly recommend you do too. Okay, so the other important thing too is to plug it in and to not skip anything. So for example, if you're plugging -2, make sure you put -2 into parentheses and then square it and then minus 7. Okay, and that is going to be, what is that, 4 minus 7? Which is going to be -3. Okay? And same thing here. If you just take your time in the beginning, you guys are still working out this for beginning of the semester. I'm not going to expect you to do this real fast. But -1 squared is going to be 1. 1 minus 7. And that is going to be -6. Okay? Alright? If you take your time in the beginning and you just take your time, slowly write it out, you know, you should be fine. And then towards the later end of the semester, okay, you can actually start to recognize stuff. Now if you notice, and this is interesting that I put it in here, with the x squared right here. Whenever you square a negative number, it becomes positive, but definitely when you square a positive, it's going to stay positive. So this is going to be just like I'm sorry guys, hold on one. Yeah, sorry, it was that. This is the actual time where that torrential downpour of rain and hail just happened, so we just had to go look at it. I've never seen anything in Reno. Okay, so going back to talking about what we were just talking about. Okay, so if we plug in 1, it's going to be no different than plugging in -1. And usually I like to plug in my negatives, and you have to be careful. You have to understand that -2 squared is going to become 4, not -4. The -1 squared is going to become 1. Okay? And so this is also going to become 1, and so it's going to be the exact same answer, so it should be -6. And then this one down here is also going to be a -3. Because I'm smart. Okay? Alright, and so as long as you understand those tables, you can technically graph anything with just tables of values and stuff. And you can understand the relationships, like, okay, this is what's happening. And as you can kind of see some relationships, and this will actually, if you just take your time with this, you can actually look at some cool things. Like, for example, it's starting at a high number, and then it's going down to negative number, and then all of a sudden it goes back up. Okay? And so, in other words, it starts increasing again. So this is what we would call a turning point. Okay? Alright? And we would also, because this is a quadratic, we'd probably also call this a local max. Or, I'm sorry, not a local max, a local min. I don't know when -7 is a maximum. That's probably never. But, you know, it does happen. Okay? So, while we're having reign of biblical proportions, I will end this for today, you guys. But patterns and expressions, just make sure you know how to make a table. Make sure you look for patterns. Make sure you look for interesting points of in calculus we call this points of inflection. So make sure you guys can see that and just work with it, okay? Thank you very much and have a great day.